It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Now, I want you, Jamie, and you guys at home to cast your mind back. Remember the energy, the vigor with which we went forth into our initial 21-day lockdown period. 21 days seemed like enough time to conquer everything, solve all of our problems. But now that we are months in and with no end in our immediate sight, our mental health can tend to fluctuate between being stable and being completely jeopardized. And I think lockdown fatigue has us realizing that it's maybe okay not to be okay.
Understandably so. So today we're asking the question, are you feeling mentally strong during this lockdown? This morning we're joined via video call by psychologist and founder of the A Really Good Therapist Center, Dr. Hanan Bushkin, to help us discuss this topic. So head on over to our Facebook page, drop a comment on this post. We would love to engage with you. Good morning, Dr. Hanan. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Crazy times. I mean, you know, if I had a penny for every time I've said unprecedented, can't wait for precedented times to return again. This really has been a test on every kind of level of life, and I think mentally more than any other. Can you maybe explain to us the dialogue that arose when we went into our initial 21-day lockdown period? Why were we all so strongly encouraged to use those 3 weeks as maybe a retreat for our mental and physical health, an opportunity to take stock and grow ourselves? And as the lockdown has continued, the realization that we've got to actually maintain that. We've got to start taking care of our mental health.
Right. So, you know, when we first entered into the 21 days, it seemed like a really great party. It seemed kind of exciting. We're going to pivot. It's the new norm. We're going to reinvent ourselves. We're all starting from scratch. There's unity in the country. We're all going to engage with the family. We're all going to be better fathers, better mothers, better spouses. This is going to be an exciting little holiday for 21 days. We're going to come out of it being better. And that's quite exciting, actually, when you enter into it. But actually, as the time kind of gets into it and you realize that staying in the same house, being with the kids, being so-called trapped is not as exciting as it promised on the brochure. So whenever we enter into a new environment, the first thing that kicks in is adrenaline. We look forward to it. We want to discover new spaces. We want to develop. We want to be better. But as the time goes by, we actually realize that this norm, the so-called new norm that we've all heard over the last 5-6 months, is different. We want to go back to the way that it was. We want to go back to how we were with our friends and our families and how we used to engage. And now this new norm is actually not so nice anymore. And that's when the adrenaline actually starts to go down. And suddenly we realize that actually this is not as it was promised on the brochure. And that's when anxiety can kick in, depression, insecurity, frustration. And that's when the real trauma comes in.
Doctor, is it then advisable and is it even always possible to be in tune with one's emotions, even with all this extra time we have been afforded?
It's incredibly difficult to be in tune with our emotion when we enter into what we call a fight or flight response. So I'll give you an analogy. If you're running away from a lion, you enter into what we call a fight or flight response. And in that moment, when I pause the picture and I say to you, what's your name? What's 2 times 7? Your first response is, I don't know. I just care about survival.
Yeah.
I just want to cope and survive. So when we enter into this crazy fight or flight response, when all we care about is the immediate survival, whether it's a survival of our marriage, whether it's survival of our job, survival of financial income, survival of our friendships, that's all we care about. It's very difficult at that moment to be alert and aware of your inner emotional state. But later on, when things calm down, that's when we become aware, and that's when we go, oh, things have changed. And once again, that's when the anxiety and the trauma kicks in.
So then, following on from that, maybe with that comes the realization that it's actually okay to be okay with this idea that we're not going to have everything in control, that things can be a little bit overwhelming. And with what's happening in the world, a lot of it isn't in our control. So sometimes we've got to kind of trust the process and come to terms with that.
So the biggest thing that I see with my patients these days is that not only are they not okay, but they're also not okay with not being okay. So this time is a very trying time for everybody because we're adjusting. We're adjusting to a brand new world with brand new rules, with brand new four walls around us. And this adjustment takes a lot of energy. And it's okay to go through this adjustment. The analogy that I can give you, if you're learning to ride a bicycle for the first time, if you have kids and you're teaching them to ride a bicycle, you're learning to ride a bicycle yourself. You're going to expect yourself to fall and trip and get out of balance, and you got to be okay with that. The moment you expect yourself to learn to ride a bicycle and never fall and never trip and never scale your elbow or your knee, that is when you're going to be disappointed by hurting yourself. So the trick is to be okay with the process of falling, and the universe in time rewards us with the adjustment. The universe then in time rewards us with being okay with the process. We just got to go through it wholeheartedly and be in the moment.
All right,
All about trusting the process. Love that.
Which is very difficult. I mean, these are extraordinary circumstances, and I think the financial impact on a grand scale on our individual lives does play a massive part. But we're going to continue to give you some practical advice on how you can get to a point to be just okay with being not okay as our starting point. Doctor, we're going to ask you to stick around so we can continue that discussion. And I'm going to put it to you guys at home. Are you feeling mentally strong during this lockdown? Some people have responded well to it, others not so much. We'd love to hear your question, your comments for psychologist Dr. Hanan Bushkin. So head over to our Facebook page, drop a comment on this post, and we'll engage with you. Maybe you've got some sage advice to share with us as well on how to deal with this very not normal, new normal that everyone keeps talking about.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Monday, so we are talking relationships. And today, psychologist and founder of the A Really Good Therapist Center, Dr. Hanan Bushkin, is joining us via video call to help us gain insight and techniques to understand and strengthen our mental health during lockdown. Once again, thank you so much for staying tuned with us this morning, Doctor.
Great to be here and to continue this conversation.
A vitally important conversation that I think maybe to our detriment has just been playing out in our own inner space, in our own minds, where we've been left alone with our demons for so long. What is the importance, when there's so much denial going on, I would imagine at the moment, the importance of everyone being honest with each other, honest with ourselves, and especially those people stuck in our immediate bubble, honest with each other about our mental health, the state of our mental health when we broach this topic?
What's very important to acknowledge is that you can't fix what you're not aware of. The moment we act like ostriches with our heads in the sand, it's impossible to deal with what is. So it's like the analogy of taking your car to a mechanic. The mechanic could never fix the issue of the car if he doesn't acknowledge what's broken. We can't play this pretend that everything is wonderful and great, because what do we fix? We only have X amount of units of energy in the day, and the trick is to use those units in elements and areas of our lives that need those units of energy. The moment those units are up, we close our eyes, we say goodnight, and we wake up the next morning with new units of energy, but we don't have more than we have. And the aim is really to acknowledge what is broken, what isn't working well. And just because something's not working well, by the way, it doesn't mean there's a mental disorder. It just means something's not working well, and it needs those units of energy in order to fix, resolve, deal with it.
Doctor, what would you then say are some of the tools we can use if we feel that we are never going to be okay during this time?
What's important to acknowledge that even in a hurricane, there are elements of your life that you can control. I'm sure you've heard this, and we've all heard this many times: control what you can, let go of what you can't. But then the common question is, what can we control during this crazy hurricane? There's plenty. You can control the quality of your relationship with your spouse. You can control the quality of your relationship with your kids, the quality of your relationship with your friends. You can control your self-development. How are you going to be better when you come out of it? And I know it sounds crazy, but can we be better coming out of it? Absolutely. You make the choice of being a victim and seeing this as I'm going to be worse, or being a victor and seeing this as I'm going to be better. You can control your diet. You can control your exercise. You can control when you go to bed and when you wake up and your routine. All those elements that I've just mentioned are under your control 100%. The more you focus on what you can control, the more in control you will be. The less you focus on what you can control and focus more on what you can't, the more you'll fall apart.
The more panicked you'll be. I love it. It's almost like it's a training camp for our own kind of inner journey. And you've got to go through those hard yards, but often that's where you can find the most growth, is once you force through those gateways. But what do we do if we get to that extreme point where we can't do anything, where we feel like we have been stuck in this lost feeling for just too long, that seems things aren't getting better, that we don't or can't grab hold of those positive thoughts, those tools to be able to manage this? What do we do when the situation becomes unmanageable?
I think that's a really fair comment, and I think it's fair to say that sometimes the weight on our shoulders through this environment can be a little bit too heavy for us to carry. There's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in getting advice. There's no shame in turning to a professional, a mentor, somebody that you trust, and go, what would you do? How would I handle this? Do you know somebody that I can speak to? There's no shame in turning to somebody that could give you advice and can pull you out of this quicksand. It's very difficult to pick ourselves up using our own shoestrings at times. And the more you try, the more frustrated you will be. If you find yourself in a position, in a situation where it's a little bit too difficult for you to see a way out, I want to tell you, there is always a way out. There is always a solution. Just because you can't find the solution doesn't mean a solution doesn't exist. But lean on somebody that will give you the out, that will give you the solution, that will give you the advice, that will give you the motivation to get out of it.
You are not alone. As much as it feels like it, you really are not alone. If nothing else, you've got us, and you've got Dr. Bushkin. Doc, thank you so much. Really appreciate the practical advice. And I know you must be going through quite an intense time now, playing your role as a psychologist, so all the best of luck to you. I hope you're managing to stay sane and safe during these unprecedented times as well.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we've had this conversation, and I encourage everybody to continue having these conversations.
Now, if someone asks you if you are okay, allow yourself the grace and kindness to give the most honest answer possible.
No, I'm lost.
We are all, of course, feeling the effects of our current world situation, and it is okay to not be okay.